Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by co-hosts James and Callum, and also joined by Julian, former ex-professional Melbourne wrestler. How you going, boys?
Friend
Yeah,
of
not
the
bad.
show.
Hi, thank you. It's probably best not to introduce me like that because, like, let's be honest, it's not a prominent thing.
Actually, that's something I want to ask you, Julian. Also,
Sorry, Pierce Carter.
yeah, you're professional, right? What like because you're not an amateur wrestler, but
Mhm.
you're like semi-pro? Is that or
No,
were?
no, professional. No, it's professional wrestling. That's
Okay,
what it is. So amateur wrestling is Olympic stuff, and professional wrestling is like the WWE stuff. So
okay,
I
but
wouldn't look at it in like I'm getting paid for it. It's just the name of what it is.
yeah,
I
Callum's
suppose to
trying to show us a
differentiate it.
picture, but it's not as
It's
blurry
yeah,
in the
it's
Sorry.
it's
background.
Julian. It's Julian
Yeah,
wrestling.
we're recording this episode on Zoom
Oh,
because Julian lives in the sticks.
I do, yes.
But he
I
was very
apologize.
he was very excited to talk about the Iron Claw because he loves wrestling.
Yes.
And he was a wrestler.
Hmm.
Um, or is a wrestler. Once a wrestler, always a wrestler.
Always
Definitely
in his
not always a
blood.
wrestler. Definitely
Okay.
not. The ship has sailed. The love is there, but the ship has sailed, I think.
Yeah, you can make a comeback.
The stomach has other intentions.
What was that, Nathan?
Said the stomach has other intentions.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yes, it's been a rough week.
The tragedy of the Von Erichs
It's
has
all right.
extended
It's all right,
to
Julian.
Julian's
Even
stomach.
MJF pooped himself in the ring.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure that's
yeah.
happened more than a lot of
I
times.
think
Oh
I think it
man,
does. I think it
look, a
does.
punch, a punch in the gut.
Actually, any athlete probably has happened.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
okay,
MG.
so
Yeah.
the amount of pressure that you take, or the impact that you take landing on the mat flat, can definitely, induce God knows what for your
Yeah.
body to do. So
Yeah. Anyway, we're um
We're
we're
talking about
talking
the
about
Iron Claw.
the Iron
cut that
Claw
in
tonight.
post. Cut that in post.
No, we're leaving it in.
Yeah, that's right. So the Iron Claw is a wrestling biopic about the Von Erichs.
Which
Yeah.
so out of all of us, Julian is probably the biggest wrestling guy, followed by Callum and Nathan. And me, like I know a bit about wrestling, but I'm not super into it.
You're what we call a mark.
What does that mean? Is that bad?
Whoa, Callum, don't go around throwing around words when you don't know how to use them, please.
Okay. Yeah, kayfabe.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I had no idea about this story. So I like went in blind. Um, and it
I knew a
was
little bit of the backstory from,
yeah,
like I guess hearing and learning about wrestling as a fan.
Mhm.
yeah.
But I didn't know the whole story.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and I was like, I can't believe I haven't heard about this before.
So it's what, like pre-WWE, WWF kind of circuit wrestlers, right?
Yes, it's like
Essentially
NWA,
territory days. Yes.
yeah,
territory days, yeah. When they were more carny-like in
Texas, Texas
kind of
wrestling.
yeah, they're kind of just like a carnival promotion almost, going from town to town, trying to just sell tickets. It was very much kind of what Vince McMahon would hate, that kind of carnival kind of showman kind of I guess lifestyle. Um, and it's sort of yeah, it's just about the family of the Von Erichs who were big in Texas, and it's about their kind of I guess their struggles and journeys as the wrestling I guess original
Yeah,
first family, so to speak.
Yeah,
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 and
yeah,
like
yeah.
it starts with like because there's like in the movie there's four brothers,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike,
What
Dave,
Kerry,
Kevin and
Kev,
Kerry.
and Kerry. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and in real life there was
There was more.
There
There was
was
five.
six.
Chris,
Yeah, it was Chris as well, who's not in the movie.
and
And
was
then
it
there's
Jack? Is it Jack first?
Jack, the
Jackie
deceased baby.
Jackie
Yeah.
Yeah.
died. Yeah, Jackie died when he was like 5 years old. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's like this group of brothers whose their dad was a wrestler back in the old-timey wrestling days, and then he kind of builds them into this wrestling family. And then throughout the 80s, as wrestling is going from that kind of carny town to town in the South kind of thing to like going on TV and becoming more popular and becoming like more sensational and colorful and like a big
Larger
deal.
than life. I mean, it's always
Yeah,
been larger than life, but
yeah,
yeah,
but now it's
it
like more
becomes national
commercialized.
instead of
Yeah,
like the territories start to become national TV kind of stuff.
yeah,
Even I believe the NWA, the Northern Wrestling Alliance, was it?
National.
National,
National
yeah.
Wrestling
Even
League.
then, that was on TV, even if it wasn't as big as wrestling is now.
But I like how the movie kind of shows through the Von Erich
Mm.
family, like how from like the late 70s, early 80s to like the early 90s, mid 90s when the movie kind of starts to end.
Yeah.
It shows like how wrestling changed and how big this family actually was. How
And
famous.
it's an interesting kind of era of wrestling to look at too, because everyone knows about wrestling kind of in the last 20 years, right? With WWE and kind of like, I guess the superstar era of wrestling.
Even if you don't know anything about
Yeah.
wrestling, you know The Rock, you've
Yeah.
seen memes. Definitely
John
you've
Cena.
seen
Exactly.
memes.
But it's an area where we don't really get a lot of, I guess, movies set in that kind of pre-WWE, pre-Fed, so to speak, kind of era of wrestlers. It's like it's a little
Yeah,
bit
it's true.
different.
How many like big budget, popular sort of mainstream wrestling movies are there? I think
There's
that's
The
why
Wrestler. That's
The
about
Wrestler,
it.
which honestly I think is probably maybe my favorite movie overall.
Yeah,
The Wrestler.
The Wrestler's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a
You
good
like that
movie.
one? You should watch The Whale. I
Actually-
think you'd love it.
No, but see, this is interesting because Julian loves wrestling, but as a movie guy, you're more just a casual, like you'll go to the movies to see whatever. Like it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So the Wrestler's more a character drama, of like a very dark kind of raw, quote unquote
Awesome.
realistic, grounded.
For sure. Look, I think, and wrestling has a stigma to it when you're in the business. That it is very, and it's not so much anymore, I suppose. And please keep in mind, local Australian wrestling. When I was there for 5 minutes, so you definitely saw nothing like it was in The Wrestler.
Oh yeah.
So I was there for 5 minutes, and again, I think it's still very different to what it was in The Wrestler as well.
Yeah.
But the old school mentality and the way it was set up and stuff, I think The Wrestler, from what I've read and heard about, I think it very much depicts, the old grizzled, not the old grizzled vet, but the old guy that wants, to reclaim fame for another.
Yeah.
Well, there's that famous story that Roddy Piper saw it and started crying, and he's like, you have to tell other people's stories, not just his. Like that. You'll see a Vietnam vet who a Vietnam vet will watch a movie about Vietnam, then he's like, I experienced that. Apparently all the old timey wrestlers of like the Piper era had similar feelings.
Yeah.
Even though those guys never really went away as such, whereas in The Wrestler he kind of does fade away.
But you'd still have your ups and downs and.
Oh well, I think The Wrestler. There's a scene in The Wrestler where he's at like a convention and there's like nobody there, right? There are all the old-time wrestlers. That is such a real thing.
Mm.
And maybe there's nobody there, but it's like these old time guys, still just trying to hang on to the last little bit of fame that they've got. Like and I suppose it is a little bit sad.
Yeah, it's also one of those things where it's like they don't know how to do anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true.
Like what in the Iron Claw, what would the Von Erichs have done? I mean, Kerry was an Olympian; he could do whatever. But like the other guys, what would they have done if they didn't have wrestling?
Well, was it?
Well,
I can't remember, but Fritz played in the Canadian Football League. Is that right, or something like that?
I think
But then he
think
he got hurt.
Kevin also played football, didn't he? And he got injured as well. Like, so I think they all had different paths, but then they all just ended up in wrestling.
It's crazy to me that like you get injured and then you go into wrestling, which is a dangerous.
That's what's
sport.
crazy. Because when people say wrestling is quote unquote fake, I'm like, but it's not fake. It's scripted. It's still
It's
a real physical event.
Athletic thing.
What's that? Do you know that famous quote from Tyson? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's probably the same in wrestling, almost.
Or like Julian was saying, if you land wrong on the hard
And like Mike
surface, yeah.
A little bit off topic, but if listeners are actually interested in kind of, I guess, look behind the scenes, Maven on YouTube has a pretty good channel where he goes into kind of like the little bit of the background of the professional wrestling industry itself, which is quite an interesting channel. Julian's nodding along. He is also.
No, I agree. It's only
YouTube
popped
channel.
up recently. It is
Yeah.
pretty interesting. Yeah.
But, so he goes into stories about like kind of how it all works behind the scenes and stories and things that have happened to him, injuries that have happened to him, and how all that kind of plays out from a logistical standpoint in the business as well. So it's like there are kind of, I guess, there are peepholes into that world that are quite interesting.
It's really interesting, even if you're not into wrestling or any sort of sport or whatever, like seeing the behind the scenes. And seeing the sort of the people behind the sport, and I think that's why the Iron Claw has become so popular. Is people aren't. It's not really about the wrestling.
Mhm.
I think Zac Efron is also a name that brings a lot of like younger people our age and like younger. But yeah, I think it's
And then you get
It's
people
a
like us who are
personal,
like,
it's personal
like-
drama more than a
Look,
sports
yeah,
film.
but I feel
yeah.
like
there's also the A24 allure. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like the
A24, yeah,
neckbeards like us, like A24, we've got to go and see that.
Look,
yeah,
I completely agree. It's not a wrestling movie. Like, I think you could almost swap in any sport to be in their background, and the story
Yeah.
was still,
yeah.
the story's still relevant. It just happens to be that they were wrestlers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we'll start with Zac Efron is our main character. He plays Kevin. The only currently living Von
The
Erich left.
oldest.
So I guess the movie has I guess a lens of Kevin's experience to it first and foremost, being I guess the
Yeah,
one that they
he's
would have consulted with to make the movie.
yeah. I guess he's the
Um,
main character.
And Zac Efron looks a little different in this movie. He has to have his face reconstructed after nearly dying.
I didn't know
Um,
this story
Yeah,
Yeah.
until you
he
guys told me.
he was dancing in his home on like in his socks apparently, like Tom Cruise does in
Risky business.
in Risky Business. And he shattered his jaw. So listeners that see him, realize he's going to look a little different. He hasn't had the
Yeah.
Botox done.
Yeah,
He's
see,
lucky to be alive.
I
Which is,
assumed, yeah, because I assumed he was like getting in, he's in his 30s and he's like, oh no, I'm getting old, and like did like a bit of a botched
The
like
thing.
Botox thing or
No,
whatever.
no.
But yeah, you guys were telling me about his accident and how he had to basically reconstruct his face. And I was like, wow,
I was gonna say it's kind of an interesting turn. Like now he's got, I guess we'll say, more of a square jaw. Is he bulks
Well,
up and becomes like a
oh,
blocky
yeah.
wrestler, and I'm like,
It looks
amazing turn to fit.
It looks like a He-Man doll,
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
action figure.
and he suits the role. If you'd have said Zac Efron 5 years ago would play this wrestler, I'd be like, he might be able to pull it off, but not as convincingly maybe as he does now.
Efron is absolutely ripped, shredded, massive
yeah.
for this movie.
Was he on the juice?
100%.
We don't know.
Look, I have no idea.
No,
But
he doesn't say so. I mean, I'm sure he'd keep that to
Oh, yeah.
himself.
No,
if he
no,
was.
like-
Yeah, no. We're only joking around. We're only joking around.
I know
But,
it's interesting because Jeremy Allen White was talked about how like his diet and his exercise regime terrified him.
I'm sure. Look, I'm sure they
Um,
would have done it responsibly and naturally, and weren't on steroids for the making of this movie, because it's just a movie, right? Once you finish it, you don't have to maintain that physique for too long. So it's
Well, yeah,
probably
that's
not
also
a
true.
kind of.
No
yeah.
one told Efron you have to get as jacked as a man has ever been jacked. Because like you look at the other boys, they're not as jacked as Efron. Efron just went a lot harder than everyone else. Like they got ripped, but like Efron's like
everyone in the movie's ripped, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like a spectrum of ripped, right? On one end you got Mike, and then you got Efron on the other.
But that's also part of the character of Mike,
Yeah.
where he's like the little brother who's like not as
Yeah.
athletic or whatever.
I liked your letterbox review, James, when you said everyone wants to be Kevin, but in reality we're all Mike,
Yeah.
and I take that to heart. It's
So
true. Julian.
yeah, we all want to be the main character who's like, yeah, I've overcome
Julian laughs.
adversity.
Julian
and I've
laughs like
conquered.
as soon as he doesn't have kids, he's not going to turn into Fritz.
You're gonna start wrestling.
There needs to be the
want you-
MCW title
yeah.
belt in this house.
I want you to come into the family.
Yeah,
son.
Julian's gonna establish
Join
the
Bankstown Wrestling Alliance.
the territory, the Gippsland wrestling circuit.
I'm sure there is one already.
there is one in check it out, Gippsland Pro Wrestling if anybody wants to say. No affiliation, but they are getting better, so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and essentially it's about the Von Erich struggles, right? It's a truly tragic story where basically,
I mean,
over the course of 20 years, he loses all of his siblings. The Fritzes lose all of their sons.
should we just do full spoilers? Or
Full spoilers, full
deep?
spoilers. Look, if you're a wrestling fan, you know this story already, right? You're just seeing it on the screen dramatically.
But I mean, if you're just listening to this and you haven't seen the movie or you don't know about the real life story, like probably watch the movie first.
If you don't have time, I would say if you don't have time, the Dark Side of the Ring special, The Last
Yeah.
of the Von Erichs, is actually basically a
Is
one-to-one
it?
of the movie. It's just condensed down to like 40 minutes.
Hang on, let me find the episode. Is it
Season
Season
1,
one?
episode 4.
Season 1,
Yeah.
episode 4 of The Dark Side of the Ring? It's like a
Yep.
40-minute
Yeah.
documentary, basically that condenses the Von Erich story.
It does.
Yeah,
I mean,
really well done.
YouTube's,
Yeah.
YouTube's got so many videos on
And
Vine.
YouTube.
Like
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
type in any little thing that you want to know about them, it's gonna pop up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. One of the interesting things about the Von Erichs is they were incredibly famous. So it's like all of this is very well documented. Every single aspect of it, you could like, if there's something interesting that happens in the film, you could look it up and find newspaper clippings, interviews, or photos from the event. You know what I mean? Like it's everywhere. Because like in the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, they were more popular than the movie lets on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the movie, obviously it's a movie, so it fictionalizes things and it condenses things and it streamlines things. Like we said earlier, they cut out one of the brothers completely.
Yeah.
Because it was too sad.
Because it was too sad. There was too many deaths. And I was like, no, I want the 3-hour Darren Aronofsky cut version where it's just like super dark and super depressing and you just show it all. But yeah, like I was watching that Dark Side of the Ring episode, and I'm like, if they did put a lot of that stuff in the movie, it would be even so unbelievable that people would be like, this is made up. This is a dumb movie.
Yeah.
I understand why they didn't do it, but also I kind of want the longer version where they just put it all in because it's such a crazy story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, right? So like how would you compare the camera work in The Wrestler of In Ring to the camera work in Iron Claw?
One of my criticisms of Iron Claw was the movie looked fine the whole time except for when they went in the ring and the camera was just shaking and was like too close to everything. And it just looked like shit and I hated it.
Which is funny and a shame considering the amount of effort that Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White and all the other actors put into actually learning the craft of wrestling to begin with. We could have had some real nice fixed kind of shots, choreographed shots.
Yeah, and I don't think it was adding to any sense of like frenetic energy or like characters being sort of off kilter. It was just bad camera work and bad editing and bad cinematography, but only in those like close ups in the ring. Otherwise, when it's outside the ring or in a dramatic scene, it's fine. It looks fine. That just really pissed me off.
Yeah, but you get that these days with hand cams and all that kind of business.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like for the last 15 years, it's become like a popular style choice.
Yeah.
But it looks like shit and always look like shit. And there's a way to do handheld well. There's a way to shoot things where, you're not just looking at Zac Efron's eyebrow while the camera shakes furiously. And I'm like, what is this? I'm supposed to be watching a fight here, not.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? So the movie makes Fritz out to be this horrible guy. And
the dad,
Fritz Von Erich, and his son, at least Kevin, I should say, because there are no other sons left. Really defends him in the Dark Side of the Ring thing, and in statements he says he was a good man, an honorable man. And then you watch Iron Claw, and it's like, help, Dad, this is going on. He's like, go talk to your brother. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, is he a good man? I mean,
so this is
unless
something.
Unless they fictionalized a large amount of the dad, which I find that hard to believe.
This
that
is
the
one
Von
of the
Erichs
more...
would even allow, because they were kind of hand in hand with the promotion of this film a little bit, the family, because they even MJF, a famous American wrestler on the AEW roster, he was an executive producer of this film. I think even Cena was involved with this film somewhere along the line. Him and MJF met at the premiere at the very minimum.
There were a couple of wrestlers, like Chavo Guerrero, I think, did all the actual wrestling training and
So I'm like, so the Von Erichs actually like came out to help promote the movie in AEW. So it's like they must have signed off at least a little bit on the portrayal of the dad. So it's like
we were talking.
Is he an honorable man, or is he a complete scumbag? Because you can't have your cake and eat it too.
We were talking after the movie about how, because it's an A24 movie, it's sort of allowed to be a bit rougher and kind of darker than a just straight up mainstream, really big budget sort of Hollywood biopic, which would have easily just been PG-13, very whitewashed. Whereas this one, there's definitely like that sort of edge to it. But even then, walking out of the cinema, we were like, could have gone further. And I'm sure there's a lot. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot they didn't show.
Well, we were talking in the documentary. Kevin Von Erich mentions that his dad ended up having brain cancer, and his dad was like trying to
yeah.
I'm not gonna say threatening to shoot him, but he was considering whether or not to shoot his son.
Well, yeah, he pointed the gun at him. He was gonna, yeah.
And I'm like, that's a scene that should have been in the film. Like, you could have tied that in as Kevin, that the last straw for Kevin. You know what I mean? Like, he left his dad and he never turned back again, kind of thing.
I think with as far as the dad goes, if you from everything I've read over the internet throughout years, or you can go back years, there's always been that speculation of the dad was a terrible guy, and obviously we don't know the truth, right? There's also, I can't necessarily trust Kevin in this either, because he's got that whole family values kind of thing. He's guided his whole life
old boy
by.
Yeah, he's like, a good Catholic, good Texas American man, family values.
That's what I was going to say.
Even if his dad was, not the nicest person in the farm, so to speak, can we really trust Kevin to be like, yeah, my dad was a terrible guy? No, because he's going to defend his family. Right?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting, right? Sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
I was going to say that the causes of death in the film, apart from Dave's, were drugs, essentially. Overdoses or drug-related. Like in Kerry's case, he shot himself. Kerry was also on drugs, and he had that whole thing going on. Yeah. And apparently there was a rumor.
Sorry, Callum, 1 second. Don't hold them.
Don't push your mic too close. Yeah.
It sounds a lot better when you leave it.
Yeah. There was a rumor that Kerry died of a drug overdose, and I was talking about this with Alan earlier today, and he says that a lot of the wrestlers at the time were convinced.
Kerry or Dave?
Dave.
Yeah.
Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Alan's connecting.
Alan's just entering our digital studio.
That's all right, Alan. You just rock up whenever you want. We've
That's all right.
There's no time schedule or anything like that. And
mate. Don't worry, he's going to derail the whole thing now. So it's a write-off. It's a write-off from this point forward.
Alan came in at the right moment, anyway. Because
I was going to come in with an RKO, and just.
I was actually referencing the conversation we had earlier, Alan, about Dave's death. How the official report, if you will, was intestinal infection, but the people of the wrestlers at the time said it was drugs, and like a lot of the other brothers in the family had issues with drugs and overdosing and that type of thing. So it's like, the reason I mention this is we're talking about the legacy of the father, like how hard he was on his sons and that type of thing, and like abusive parents. I'm sure people will flock to alcohol or drugs or reckless living, as a reaction to, an abusive childhood or what have you. And like, I don't necessarily mean abusive as in violence, but if you have a household that's super strict and you control your children with an iron claw, that the kind of pressure you put on them can make them turn to drugs or alcohol or whatnot.
I would say playing devil's avocado here as well. Yeah, we know Callum's clipping almost because the mic and stuff.
I apologize. I don't know what to do about it.
Move the mic away from your face,
Move the mic away from your face and talk a bit slowly.
You too, Nathan.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yes, excellent.
Okay.
But aside from obviously Callum mentioned about family dynamic and all that kind of thing turning to drugs. Drugs is a thing in wrestling, especially going back years and years ago. It's not uncommon.
That's what I was gonna say. Because it's such a physical sport, painkillers become a go-to because you need to meet the next show. You're wrestling twice a day sometimes.
There's also, not only is it the family pressure, but it's pressure from public the fans and the business side of it and the bosses and whatever. And then there's the pressure on your body of doing all this crazy athletic stuff and the injuries you get and having to keep outperforming yourself every time. So I think any sport, every sport we've heard of drug scandals or whatever, whether it's performance enhancing or other.
Yeah, pain relief is a notorious problem in the wrestling industry.
Mm.
And going back to what we were saying about the dad and stuff, one of the recurring themes or recurring, I guess, scenarios, I guess, where the dad is portrayed in a negative light is when Mike nearly dies from toxic shock syndrome, and then they have the press conference. Apparently, in real life, the dad was like, he's going to be out wrestling soon, and like you can see, Mike's just basically brain dead, right? He's just kind of there, and the dad's like, nah, mate, he'll be in the ring next week. Like obviously, he doesn't really have a care for his son at that point. And so it's I'm not saying he was a bad person. I didn't know the man. None of us know their family dynamic, but you can see, I guess, publicly there was that image of kind of distance and a kind of cold relationship. It was like a business relationship almost, from an outside perspective.
Well, what was it? Maybe it was Dark Side of the Ring where they I think it was that where they said that Fritz was underpaying his kids so that they would have to rely on him. So that he always had control over them, like they weren't independent.
So, well, there's in the Iron Claw they also mentioned that when Kevin says to his dad, "I wasn't earning nearly as much as the book sale was."
Yeah.
So it was interesting. Look, we'll never know that relationship. You can read dozens of kind of journals and different kind of, I guess, editorials on. Was Fritz a nice man? Community consensus among fans is no. But Kevin defends his dad, and I guess with most things, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think the movie does a good job. Like it shows that he wasn't a good man, but it maybe doesn't go as far as what was in reality.
Exactly. Also, the men were like that back in his day. Like
that's also true.
And also
post-war kind of like be a man.
Yeah, even Kevin now is of an age where he's just like, even if all those awful things happen to him, he's just like, we don't talk about those.
Exactly. So that's the other kind of thing. We don't know what problems the dad had himself. With mental health and everything else.
Yeah, I think they kind of hint at it in the movie, but they say in the Dark Side of the Ring where he was never as famous as he wanted to be. He was never given his big chance. So he was living vicariously through his sons. And the movie is 100% that, where it's just he keeps like pitting his sons against each other and trying to turn them into what he couldn't be.
Yeah.
And that obviously damages them physically and psychologically. And they're all competing for his affections, even though he's like an asshole.
The moment, excuse me, the moment you're not on top, he's just going to move on to the next son, and that's very clear.
Yeah, but the rankings can always change.
In my mind, like surely there's some element of truth to that. It's like,
I'm sure that was something that was actually said. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And then you could have prefaced it, but I'm not a double person. You can change the rankings. It's on you how much I love you. Like, so I think it's it's a very complicated relationship. The dad has with his sons. Overall, I think the movie does a good job of kind of showing that relationship and the relationship that Kevin has with his brothers being more important because he can't rely on his parents necessarily for that support.
I would have liked it to be a bit longer, flesh out the brothers' relationship a bit more, show a bit more of like the wrestling, or at least not the wrestling, but the sort of stuff, the sort of brouhaha surrounding it, the media.
I would have liked to see. I would have loved. This is a different movie, but I would have loved to see like more behind the scenes stuff about wrestling. So like there's that scene where you see the brothers, and you got Bruiser Brody, another famous wrestler there, and they're like discussing, okay, I'll go up here, and then you don't leave me too long. I'm gonna that's the kind of stuff I'd love to see behind the scenes, the communication. You know what I mean? Even like maybe some secret hand signals they used to use, or something kind of, a little kind
of like, when they get close to each other, whisper in each other's ears, like, I'm gonna do this. Okay.
But
yeah,
also
I
just like
think
I'd love to see just the boys hanging out in the locker room. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
I was going to
one
say,
of
I
my
would have loved to see an extension of the scene where Ric Flair's like,
Yeah,
"All right, let's
that's
come
that's
get some more
exactly
beers,"
what.
and, you know.
that was my
that's
Yeah, that's
favorite
exactly
exactly
what I
what I
was
was
gonna
gonna
say.
say.
So
Oh,
I I gave this movie 3 stars on Letterboxd, but I upped it to 3.5 for that one scene where Ric Flair is just sculling a beer, and
Because
it's
that's
yeah.
the most authentic thing about
yeah
the movie.
in the
Yeah.
locker room after fighting and like in the locker room he's just sculling a beer, and it's all off screen, and you just hear him like chugging and then crushing the can,
And he
and
makes references to doing coke and some other stuff, and he's like, "Where are we gonna
yeah.
get ripped?"
Yeah,
Just
and
like,
it's just
yeah.
like a shot of Kevin. He's just like looking at him. Oh man, that was so funny. That was so good.
The other thing is, I think they could have found a guy who looks more like Ric Flair.
It's fine.
Yeah, but it's like the most they found the guy who looks like Ric Flair the least out of all the guys. You know what I mean? Like they just picked,
I
and
don't
they
know
could have
if
picked
the
any
least.
guy.
I don't know about
Um,
that, man. It's young Ric Flair. Like,
They should
Yeah,
have
but
had a daughter.
young Ric Flair
She's
looks
got a
like
deep
old
enough
Ric Flair.
voice.
There's
Yeah,
very
it's
little.
funny. It's funny you say that, Callum, because I remember sitting in the movie thinking to myself, "Man, this guy has no charisma compared to Ric Flair."
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah.
No, like don't get me wrong.
Maybe
Like young Ric Flair looks pretty much like old Ric Flair. So Ric Flair looks like Ric Flair all the way until he hits like 60, and then he becomes super old Ric Flair.
I reckon Ric Flair's always looked old.
Yeah, he has. No,
but
you
everyone
go to
looks
the
old
80s.
in like the 70s and
No,
80s. Like
but Ric Flair specifically, you look at his matches from like even like the late 70s and the early 80s, he already looks like an old man.
yeah, no, I know what you mean. But yeah,
So yeah,
Drugs, abuse, will do to you.
yeah,
Well,
He's
yeah,
like
so,
35. He already looks the
just
same.
anyway,
smoking,
look,
drinking.
we gotta woo in the movie, so that's fine.
so
You got
we're
several
talking.
ones.
We're talking about parts of the movie parts of real life that were left out of the movie, right? So there was Lance Von Erich, who I
Yeah,
believe I believe who
Wasn't-
came in. So Lance Von Erich is not a real Von Erich. He was just some wrestler that they brought in. Apparently, they thought he just looked like one of the Von Erichs.
They needed another brother after David died, right?
Yeah, such a Fritz
I
decision.
actually just read now. I think it was when Mike got hurt. They brought him in.
Okay, yeah,
Look, I don't know the exact timeline.
around, yeah,
But if they put that in, that also added to the. I don't know if you'd call it the downfall of Von Erichs, but apparently there was like lots and lots of heat because of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Fans knew.
but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I would like a longer version that's like closer, even though pacing becomes an issue. But like, that's just fascinating. Like the whole thing.
Yeah. See, I said after we watched it, they need a mini series because like I'd love to see like an HBO 8-part show on the Von Erichs like this, where they can really take their time to eke the drama out. All the little bits and pieces like Lance Von Erich, Chris, it can all just be weaved into one long tragic tale. It's like talking about like movies are good, like you know what I mean, but sometimes with a story like this,
you could
do need more time to kind of move through it.
You could do like an anthology series, like American Horror Story, where every season is just a different wrestler or a different point in wrestling, and there'd be so many stories you'd never have to end it.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
True.
Like
They got to start with the Chris Benoit story.
Yeah.
Oof,
Oh god,
that's
Cut
a
that
rough,
in post.
rough one.
Okay, so you say you start with that story, right? But that's essentially what Dark Side of the Ring is, right?
I'm talking about like
James Smith's dramatized.
Yeah, like a dramatized. Like each season is like 6-hour-long episodes of here's this dramatic, because and that's a different audience as well. I mean, that's like with the Iron Claw. It's like a lot of people don't care about wrestling or don't know anything about wrestling, but they're gonna go see.
An equally fascinating show would be like a Succession style version of like behind the scenes of wrestling, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like you look at the WWE, that's like Succession written all over it.
I never watched.
Shane's like, "Daddy, please," and he's like, "No."
Basically, he's Roman.
Did any guys watch Heels? Was that what it was called?
It got cancelled, so I haven't started it.
I never saw it, but I assume that wasn't as deadly serious as like Iron Claw or.
Nah, I don't think so.
It was just like we're wrestlers.
Yeah, it was like here's the business.
Yeah, I never saw it.
No,
but yeah, they could make any kind of. Well, A24, they're doing TV shows now, so they could.
Yeah, and Nick Cage is doing TV too, so who knows? I'd like to see Nick Cage do Ric Flair.
There are like different wrestling shows. I think there's Is it Well? There's one with like AJ Lee in it. Like I'm not sure. Anyway, there are different wrestling shows out there.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like a big budget, like there's we've got like True Detective and Stranger Things and all these big shows.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we need like
Netflix has a
a
wrestling show.
drama. Well, they had Glow and then they canceled it. Still salty, but that was more of a comedy.
Yeah. But yeah, the Iron Claw.
Yes,
I thought
No, I was just trying to articulate my thoughts because I was gonna say like there's so much tragedy in the film, it's almost hard to recommend to someone unless they like heavy dramas. Because it's like a lot of the people who would go to see this movie are like sports going people. Like I'm sorry, Julian, but we did joke about like when you went to see this film, you'd be like, "Where's all the sport montages?"
Well, okay.
And then like, because it's like James said, this movie is not about wrestling. It's about a family. But like, you knew what you were going in for, right? But a lot of people who are just like sports focused, they'd be like, "What is this?"
I went in knowing a little bit about the Von Erichs. I knew obviously it's wrestling, whatever. It's going to draw me there, whether it's good or shit. Like I was going to probably go anyway. But Emma, my wife, went, and she isn't a wrestling fan really. She doesn't know anything about the Von Erichs. She sat there and she watched it as essentially as a drama, and it does like it. She got what she would get out of any other heavy drama movie.
Did she like it?
Yeah, she did like it.
Oh, good.
So obviously, the story and it's interesting enough for non-wrestling fans to go there and enjoy it.
Yeah. And I only did the Leonardo, even as a wrestling fan, I only did the Leonardo DiCaprio point one time when I saw MJF in the cameo.
That really split second. Apparently, Lance. Apparently, he was Lance.
See, that didn't come across at all in the film.
Oh, that's even funnier because he wouldn't tag him in.
Yeah.
In that scene, that's funny.
That didn't come across at all in the story.
Yeah, but that makes it funnier if that's who he's playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, what did you think, Alan? We've basically voiced all our opinions so far.
Well, he has to take himself off mute in order to say something.
I'll speak when I want to. I don't want unnecessary noise coming in for no good reason. This is a professional program, Julian. Aside from what you might think.
Well, my green room didn't have my blue M&Ms that I requested, but anyway, it is what it is.
No, it's I like what I was discussing with you, Callum. It was obviously some people can go in there thinking that it's going to be more wrestling than there was, but realistically, it's just a family drama about how a father's ambition kind of destroyed his family, and it's conveyed through wrestling.
Yeah.
It's and if you kind of reconcile with that information, even if you are a huge wrestling fan and you're there for it, I think you can still have a great time with that movie.
Yeah,
it's just understanding what you're going for.
Yeah, I think all the actors are really good too. They're all charismatic and likable, and so when bad things start happening, you feel like that loss.
Yeah.
The cast is
and it never stops happening to poor Kevin. He can't get a win. Do you know how hard it is for him to get a win?
I couldn't believe it kept happening. It kept piling on top, and I was just like,
yeah. At some point he has to stop feeling it. You
know
what I mean?
Yeah, and then you go on Wikipedia and you look at the real story, and it's even worse. And you're like, Jesus Christ! Like, just how much
turns out there is a curse of the Von Erichs after all.
Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting. They left possibly the darkest part of Kevin's journey out. Alan, did you end up watching the Dark Side of the Ring episode on this?
No, I didn't.
No. Well, he goes into a story where in real life, not in the film, he basically was like, I've had enough of this. I want to go. Basically, he's like, I want to go to prison.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, so I'm going to go get a gun and I'm going to go like rob some people and I'll get put away. You know what I mean? And then it takes all agency then who was it? Someone says to him, "Love you, Kev," and basically just like
the owner. Yeah.
After all his brothers are dead, he's just like, I'm either going to kill myself or I'm going to do something really terrible. So he's like, I'm better off just going to jail. Like I don't want to be here anymore. So he goes into a gun store, steals a gun in plain view of like the old like Texans at the owners at the gun store. Like just like stuffs a rifle down his pants and like walks out the door, just looking straight at these guys. Like, what are you gonna do? And the old guy's like, "Love you, Kev." And then he like walks out, and then he said he thought about it and then walked back in and like
because the the compassion essentially disarmed him enough to be like,
Yeah.
what am I doing? I'm doing
Yeah.
something really stupid.
And I think like they do that thing at the end of a lot of biopics, and they do an Iron Claw where it shows like the photo of the real Kevin and his and like
extended family and
his
such.
family now. And he is like living a sort of tranquil,
Peaceful,
life with his sons and their grandkids, and like his sons are in wrestling now, and it's kind of like this. He's overcome so much in his life.
It's funny. It's like I said to Alan when we were talking about it off air. I'm like, the karmic cost that man had to pay to get there is immense. You know what I mean? And the suffering he had to do to get to his heaven.
I brought that story up because it goes to show you essentially that story he tells in the Dark Side of the Ring episode is really basically like it's the core of Kevin's experience, is that he'd had no compassion, no kindness, no love. You know, it was all just battles and loss and hurt with, with dysfunctional family relationships maybe. And then like all it took for him to kind of turn it around was the one person he barely knew to be like,
and it's that
I love you, you don't have to do this.
It's that big unanswerable question of like, if he and all his brothers were given that compassion growing up, or weren't as pressured to be wrestlers, would they all still be alive? Or
probably, but who knows?
And is the curse, is it real?
The curse is just expectations put upon you by the people.
Well, it's funny, that story that Nathan just said about how he went to steal the gun. He broke the Von Erich curse when he went back into the gun store. If you want to use that metaphor, because it's like if he did steal the gun, he would have become another statistic.
This is why I want like the 3-hour version where Zac Efron like is like at his wits' end and like goes into the gun. That would have been such a powerful scene.
It would have been so tense.
The end scene with his two sons, where he's finally allowed to cry in front of them, because he's never been allowed, as a man, he's never been allowed to cry. Like that, I guess, also fulfills the same function.
In the movie, he also kind of breaks the curse by kind of giving it all up and walking away and just going to live a small existence with his family.
Yeah, and not treating his sons
and just ignoring. It's that moment where he's just like, you know what, I don't care what my dad thinks. You know what, I'm walking away.
Yeah.
And the dad's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm doing what's best for me. It's that moment where he turns it around. And he's like, I don't care what you think anymore.
Yeah.
But look, overall, I enjoyed it. It was a good time.
I think it was good, but not great.
Yeah. Obviously, there's stuff that they left out, stuff that almost really kind of important to his story as well. As you said, we needed that extra hour. Because there's a lot of stuff they missed out that is actually important and informs a lot of Kevin's character.
Yeah. I also like I know we were talking about Zac Efron earlier, but I can't remember if I said like I'm not really a fan of his dramatic acting, but in this movie I thought he was good.
Yeah, he was good.
Especially considering like I think Jeremy Allen White and Harris Dickinson like are much better actors. Like I think Zac Efron as sort of the main character and like has a lot of dramatic weights to lift. Like he does a good job.
He plays a good beefcake. We need him as the next Deathstalker or He-Man.
Oh my god! The next Deathstalker with that jaw too.
You know what they should get?
Wow!
Oh, they should get all the Iron Claw boys before they slim back down. Just do like a sword and sorcery movie.
Yeah.
Leave their hair, leave the mullet.
Yeah, bro, that would be sick. Do you know how excited I'm getting right now? Just like
someone call A24.
I just want I want Zac Efron to be like double the size. Like he can barely move. You get to that point of bulk where you're basically disabled.
He can't touch his back anymore. Yeah.
He can touch nothing because he's just so full of muscle. And he can play the pig man. Oh man. No, but honestly though, I want more wrestling movies because I think it's an untapped resource in cinema. Because how many boxing movies do we have? We have heaps. How many athletes movies do we have? But like I don't mean like biopics. I mean like just general wrestling movies. Like I want a movie about an amateur wrestler who wants to become the best.
All right. As of the
are we talking
time
amateur
of this
wrestling,
recording,
like Olympic wrestling?
No, professional wrestling. Like a guy. No,
As
like
of the time,
a guy who starts as slim and then he's like, I'm gonna bulk up and I'm gonna be the best, and then montages of weightlifting and then boom, Zac Efron.
all right, as of
Yeah.
the time of this recording, all right, we may or may not be millionaires through the Powerball.
I thought it gets drawn at 9:30.
Well, when does it
I
get
don't know.
drawn?
Yeah, we don't know
Yeah,
yet.
it's 9:30
we
these
have
days.
we have Schrodinger's Lotto
Well,
winners at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
If we do
this
win
might be
100,
our last episode.
that's it. If we do win $150 million, boys, we're gonna make that wrestling movie, and Julian's gonna get ripped.
Yeah.
If you pay me 150 million, I'll do whatever you want.
If
They take all the steroids.
That's it.
if Kerry can wrestle without a foot, you can wrestle with your bad stomach.
With a destroyed
Also, it's a movie version, so we can just cut and like just do fake it
Julian,
all.
can you still take bumps? Can you still like do the back kind of stuff? That's
I
what we
can't
need.
tell you,
Just
I haven't
like,
taken a bump since I got really sick, so who knows? Do you know what? Aside from the stomach, I don't know if I honestly don't. It's funny. I was at a show maybe 6 months ago, or whatever it was, and I spoke to one of the guys that I used to train with. So we came up at the exact same time, and obviously he's continued. I haven't. And he goes to me, "Do you ever like crave getting back in the ring?" And I said, "I crave the entertainment part of it, but I don't think my body could do the bumps and the physicality of it." Like I remember, I walked away, and there was a spot in my lower back. I reckon 2 years. Like it took me 2 years before I got over it. And I reckon if I took like a couple of bumps, I reckon I'd be sore for like a month. Like
that part of your life is over.
And we have you on
for what it's
training,
worth,
like the average wrestler.
It's all right, Alan. You can be the wrestler. We'll get you ripped.
For what it's worth, if any of us took a bump, Julian, we wouldn't be getting back up.
Yeah.
Like the slightest knock of the breeze, and then we'd be like Kevin when he can't get up off the concrete.
Oh man.
Anyway.
Anyone else got any thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's it.
No, I really liked it. James says there's something I've been thinking about lately. Is one time James said that a measure of a movie is how soon does he want to rewatch it.
That's how I.
And I'm rewatching Oppenheimer right now, and like Alan was like, "We only recently saw that one," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I kind of have a hankering for it again. I want to sink my teeth back into it."
That's why. No, you go on. Sorry.
This is a movie that I could see myself rewatching when it comes out on Blu-ray. Whereas like I'll put it in and I'll, again, sink my teeth into it. So it's like, it might not be a perfect wrestling movie, but I do kind of want to watch it again. And I can't really put my finger on why. Maybe it's just the charisma of the Efron. I don't know. And like you said, Joey Allen White and the other guy whose name. Yeah. Because it's such a strong leading cast.
For the most part, it looked nice, and it's well made.
Also,
for this part. The
as
music
Alan
was
Moore
pretty
says,
good.
we're all countrymen at heart, as Alan Moore says, and they have some good southern energy in it that we can all pick up on.
I mean, some of us like Julian actually live it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We're not. He's a real one. We're just pretending.
Julian has a cowboy hat.
Where's the cowboy hat? Yeah.
In Efron. Yeah. I looked at the screen. I'm like, oh my god, is he playing me or?
It's me. Yeah,
me. All right. I reckon that's all the time we've got.
Since you're our special guest, do you have anything final parting words?
Go see it because it's not just for a wrestling fan. Like if you enjoy movies or if you have a spare afternoon, whatever it might be, go see it. You'll enjoy it. You don't have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy this movie. You just have to enjoy the movies,
suffering,
or even just even if you just want to kill a couple of hours or whatever it is.
Also support A24. You know what I mean? Like they're putting out good movies. So
I want to put this out there. It blows my mind. So where I live, right, we've got like just essentially an independent. I think they've got like a few different cinemas around, but there might be 4 or 5, so it's not a big Hoyts or village or anything like that. But where we are, we don't get big releases. We don't get long-term releases. It's gonna have to be a big movie for it to get like a full release, right? And when was it Five Nights at Freddy came out, the town over that's 1 hour closer to Melbourne got it, I think, the day of the release, and we got it like 2 weeks later. So the fact that we got the Iron Claw day of release and it played 3 times a day for an entire week blew my mind.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and we had to go to one of our local hipster cinemas to go and see it.
Yeah, there you go.
Our local.
Yeah. But I think
Wrestling's pretty popular with the country men and women.
yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
there's only
support hipster cinemas.
There were only 4 of us in the cinema, so
I mean, there's only like 20 people in the whole town, so you know.
Not bad. Yeah.
Pretty good turnout.
Yeah.
No, but I think A24 is just getting bigger and bigger, and they have so many movies coming out, but they seem to mostly been keeping the quality up. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that now they're an actual big kind of competition for the kind of big studios like Warner Brothers and Paramount and whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like now like something like this is going head to head with like one of the bigger studios.
I mean, I think it's because we've talked about before on the show, like all the big studios only seem to be wanting to make like huge tentpole blockbuster films like the MCU movies and stuff like that. Whereas A24's always done their own thing. And they've got like traditionally mid-budget movies. They're not cheap, but not super expensive either.
Yeah.
So, and I think people have
they
been
invest
people are
more
getting
in the
bored.
talent.
Yeah, people have been getting bored lately with like the big tentpole movies. So when a movie like Iron Claw comes out, hopefully people are going to see it because it's like the kind of drama you'd get in the 90s before these big movies started coming out all the time.
The Marvel movies and the DC movies and whatever it might be, like I don't care about them. You know, if I was still living in Melbourne and you guys wanted to go, I'd probably tag along, right? But I'm not going out of my way to see the millionth Marvel movie for the year.
Don't worry.
We've stopped going to see them at the movies,
Yeah, so when it comes out, I just sure, there's a new Spider-Man out or whatever it is, but I'm just skipping over it. Like I don't care about that.
No, neither do we. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think like the big studios invest in IP, and I think A24 is investing in talent, like the filmmaker and the writer and the actor and the producer, and like
our next most exciting movie, I think, is a Bollywood movie. Just out of if people are interested, you know, like
just so you know, Alan's laughing right now. So
that's what.
No, but it's true. Like instead of going to see the Marvel, we're waiting to go see Fighter, which is like
the
Indian
next one
Top
we
Gun.
want to see.
Yeah,
Indian ripoff of it.
Indian Top Gun with the budget for CG is like a packet of Pringles.
Yeah,
and it's the guy on the computer. It's like, do it, man, and he's like, okay.
Yeah, but they get. I hope they start singing in the plane, like while they're flying the plane.
Also, I think because I don't know how many other war style films you've seen, but be ready for a lot of pro-Indian military propaganda.
Yeah. No,
that's all right. We're here for it.
Yeah, we're down for it. All right, we'll make plans after we stop recording. All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We're just about out of time for tonight. Please like and share the Tuesday Review Facebook page, Instagram page, Threads page, Twitter page, New Sky page,
Blue Sky,
Newsmast, sorry,
Blue Sky and Blue Mast.
Yes, that's it. Also, you can follow us on Letterboxd. I am Nathan B_90.
I'm Channel Drifter, all one word.
I'm just making mine. I'll give you a name in a second.
my name is Julian.
Julian, make a Letterboxd.
It's actually what a Letterboxd is.
So it's a movie kind of movie review.
It's like a social media app. Every time you watch a movie, you can catalog it and people can see your review of it and
it's a way just to see what your friends are watching with movies and basically and TV later on.
Callum's been watching so much stuff, but he hasn't been updating his letterbox.
It's gonna happen, and it's gonna blow your feed when it does.
What, you're gonna do them all at once?
If you want the Tuesday Review to take off, you have to work the socials. Like, what are you doing?
Oh, mate,
and don't worry. Nathan said Twitter. What's Twitter?
What's that, Julian? You're breaking up.
My back is breaking, Julian. I wouldn't open your mouth unless you want to be put to work. All right.
No. Look, I'm a busy man now. I can't commit to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
For the listeners, especially, join us on Threads. We're trying to make Threads our big thing. Threads is fun. Interact with us on Threads. But contact us on any of the socials. We'd love to hear from you.
And YouTube, we're still uploading our old stuff. Hopefully, we'll have some more video content soon. And this year, hopefully, we'll have some more interviews and stuff coming. So make sure to subscribe to YouTube.
Alan, how you going? Do we have to cut the feed, or you got your account ready?
How long are you gonna? Are you still making an account or?
Yes, it's Alan20.
Alan20 on Letterboxd.
How do you spell that for the listeners, Alan? ALAM.
ALAM, M for Michael.
Yeah.
20.
And 20.
Okay, very good. You can just follow us on Letterboxd. We'll make Julian an account too. It can just all be wrestling movies. That's fine.
All five of them.
All five of them. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back next week. Adios, cousins.
See ya.